A stone face woven from living leaves stares silently from a cathedral wall. This is the Green Man, an ancient symbol hiding in plain sight for centuries. By the end of our investigation, you will understand the surprising global secrets behind this mysterious face and why its true meaning has been fiercely debated for generations. We will explore why a pagan-looking figure fills Christian churches and how the same leafy visage appears in art from India to ancient Rome. What does this persistent, silent witness from our past tell us about our own connection to the natural world? That silent stone face is a puzzle box carved in oak and limestone. At its most basic, the Green Man is an artistic motif, a human face, usually male, that is quite literally consumed by the natural world. Leaves, vines, and branches burst from its features, often sprouting directly from its mouth, nostrils, or even the corners of its eyes. It is not a portrait of a known king or a saint from scripture. Instead, it is a face of pure, untamed foliage given human form. You find this symbol most famously as a carving, a three-dimensional sculpture peering down from the ceilings, walls, and pillars of medieval European churches and cathedrals. It hides in the stonework of great halls and even on the wooden panels of old pubs, but it is not confined to architecture. The same motif appears in the delicate metalwork of jewelry, the painted borders of illuminated manuscripts, and centuries later in modern stained glass and public art. This very versatility is a clue. The Green Man is not a fixed character with a clear biography. He has no sacred text, no single myth that explains his origin. He is an image, a powerful idea given form, and that profound ambiguity is the very heart of his enduring mystery. Why would such a wild, seemingly pagan symbol be invited into the heart of a Christian church? The answer begins not in the quiet chapels of Europe, but in the bustling cities of a much older empire. To find the Green Man's origins, we must first confront a disorienting timeline. The story does not begin in the Middle Ages, but centuries earlier with the rise and fall of an empire. In the grand villas and public buildings of ancient Rome from around the 1st and 2nd centuries, we find carvings known to archaeologists as the foliate head. These are faces, often of the god Oceanus or other nature spirits, framed by or sprouting seaweed and acanthus leaves. They are decorative, symbolic of abundance and the natural world's power, but they are not yet the Green Man as we know him. They are a distant, elegant ancestor. Then Rome fell, the great empire crumbled, and with it, the artistic traditions that had sustained such motifs seemed to vanish into the long, turbulent centuries often called the Dark Ages. The leafy face, it appears, went dormant, buried like a seed in frozen ground. Then something extraordinary happened. Around the 11th century, with no clear warning or precedent, the face erupts back into art with a startling new energy. This is no longer the calm, classical foliate head of Rome. This is something wilder, more visceral. In the shadowy stone of newly built Romanesque churches across Normandy, England, and Germany, the Green Man bursts forth. He is no longer just framed by leaves, he is being consumed by them. Vines spew from his gaping mouth, his eyes become sockets for budding branches, his very humanity is dissolving into the forest. His popularity is explosive and utterly unexplained by any written record of the time. Why here? Why now? Why in the very heart of the Christian church during an age of profound faith? The symbol does not fade, it evolves. Through the soaring Gothic cathedrals of the 13th and 14th centuries, the Green Man remains, sometimes becoming more refined, sometimes more grotesque, but always present, a silent, leafy witness to centuries of prayer and stonework. Then, after the Reformation and the Enlightenment, his presence in new architecture wanes once more. He becomes a relic, a curious fossil of a superstitious past. But the seed was merely dormant again. In the 19th century, two powerful movements resurrect him. The Gothic revival, with its romantic longing for the medieval past, puts the Green Man back on new churches and university buildings as a symbol of a lost, more spiritual connection to nature. Then the arts and crafts movement, led by visionaries like William Morris, embraces him not as a religious symbol, but as an emblem of craftsmanship, organic design, and a direct rebellion against the soulless machinery of the Industrial Revolution. In each era, the face remains, but its meaning is reinvented. This is the core of the mystery. The Green Man is not a fixed icon with a single story. He is a mirror. Each culture that carves him seems to see its own fears, its own longings, reflected back in his leafy gaze. This silent witness did not confine his gaze to a single country or even a single continent. To understand his mystery, we must trace his footsteps across a map, following a trail of stone and leaf that stretches across the world. The heartland of the Green Man, the place where he appears with the greatest density and variety, is unquestionably the medieval landscape of Britain and France. Here, he is not a rare curiosity but a constant companion in stone. Walk into the majestic Chartres Cathedral in France, and high above the nave, among hundreds of other carvings, you will find him. Journey north to the haunting ruins of Fountains Abbey in England, and his face emerges from the weathered sandstone. Perhaps most famously, there is the enigmatic Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, a building already shrouded in legend. Amidst its famously dense and symbolic carvings, the Green Man appears not once, but over 100 times. He stares from every corner, a chorus of leafy faces that seems to guard the chapel's deeper secrets. From this northwestern European heartland, the motif travels. It appears in the dark, intricate woodwork of German churches, in the sun-baked stone of Spanish monasteries, and even in the art of Italy, where the classical foliate head of ancient Rome seems to have reawakened in a new medieval form. But then the map does something astonishing. It leaps across vast distances, defying the simple story of a symbol slowly spreading from a single source. Consider a stunning example from the 16th century, far from the Gothic stonemasons of Europe. In the city of Fatehpur Sikri in India, built by the Mughal Emperor Akbar, there is a magnificent stone column. Carved into its capital, amid intricate Islamic geometric patterns, is a distinct classical foliate face, leaves curling from its mouth. It is a green man in all but name, sitting comfortably within a completely different architectural and religious tradition. Similar faces appear in ancient Syrian art and in scattered artifacts across the Middle East. This geographic spread presents us with two equally compelling possibilities, and both are profound. The first is a story of cultural exchange, a slow, miraculous journey of an idea along the Silk Road, passed from sculptor to sculptor, adapting to each new culture it touched until it found a home under both the spires of Chartres and the domes of Fatehpur Sikri. The second possibility is even more intriguing. What if the Green Man was not an invention that spread, but an idea that simply emerged independently in different times and places? What if, whenever humans looked deeply at the overwhelming power and beauty of the natural world, at the way life bursts forth from decay, this particular image, this face made of leaves, was a natural, almost inevitable expression of that awe? This map of leafy faces suggests the symbol taps into something universal, a deep, shared human intuition about our place within the living world. And if that is true, then the next logical question is perhaps the most difficult of all. What exactly was he meant to represent to the people who carved him? That question of meaning brings us to a single, arresting detail of the symbol itself. Why is it only a head? The Green Man is almost never depicted with a body, a throne, or any surrounding scene to give him context. He is a disembodied presence, a consciousness emerging directly from the stone and the leaf. To understand this choice, we must listen to whispers from a much older world, a world where the human head was not just a part of the body, but a vessel of immense and terrifying power. Long before the first Norman stonemason carved a leafy face, the Celtic peoples of ancient Britain and Gaul held a profound belief that scholars call the cult of the head. To them, the head was the seat of the soul, the source of a person's life force, wisdom, and spiritual power. This power did not end with death. Celtic myths and historical accounts speak of revered enemies whose severed heads were preserved, sometimes embalmed in cedar oil and displayed in sacred spaces. These heads were not mere trophies. They were believed to retain the ability to speak prophecy, to offer counsel, and to guard the community. The head was a conduit to the other world, a bridge between the realm of the living and the realm of the spirits. This ancient, deep-seated reverence gives us a startling new lens through which to view the Green Man. He is not a decapitated head in a gruesome sense. He is a sacred head, a living, conscious power that has been separated from the mundane human form to become something more. He is the wisdom of the forest given a face, the voice of nature itself speaking through a mouth that spills forth leaves instead of words. This idea did not exist in a vacuum. We can see a fascinating parallel, though with a very different meaning, in the Christian art of the same medieval period that produced so many green men. Consider the frequent depiction of the head of John the Baptist presented on a platter. Here, too, is a disembodied head that holds profound spiritual power, representing martyrdom, prophecy, and the voice crying out in the wilderness. The motif of the speaking, potent head was already in the cultural air, a powerful symbol understood on an instinctive level. Even the classical world contributed to this symbolism. The Roman bust, a portrait sculpture depicting just the head and shoulders, was designed to capture the essence, the character and authority of the individual. It was a focus of identity and memory, so when we look at the Green Man, we are seeing these powerful streams of thought converge. He carries the ancient Celtic idea of the head as a vessel of otherworldly power. He echoes the medieval Christian understanding of a sacred head as a source of prophecy, and he uses the classical artistic form of the bust to present a face that is not a portrait of a man, but a portrait of nature itself. He is not a person who is part of the forest. He is the forest, conscious and watching. The leaves are not adorning him, they are him. This explains the absence of a body. A body would ground him, make him merely a man in the woods. As a head alone, he transcends the individual. He becomes an emanation, a focal point where the wild intelligence of the natural world makes itself seen. He is not in the architecture, he is emerging from it, just as life eternally emerges from the earth. This symbolic power of the head answers one mystery, but it immediately raises another, even more contentious one. If he is the spirit of the wild, what on earth is he doing inside a church? The specific leaves that form his face are a language all their own. To decipher the Green Man, we must become botanists, learning to read the flora that bursts from his stone lips. It is not a uniform greenery. The plants depicted vary dramatically from carving to carving, and this variation is a powerful clue. The most common association is with the oak leaf. The mighty oak, with its deep roots and enduring strength, was sacred to the Celtic Druids long before the first churches were built. A green man composed of robust, unmistakable oak leaves could be seen as a direct, perhaps even subversive, nod to that ancient pre-Christian world. It is a symbol of endurance, of a primal power that persists despite the new faith built around it. But then we encounter the delicate, scrolling leaves of the acanthus plant. This is a classic motif from ancient Greek and Roman art, symbolizing enduring life and rebirth from the earth. Its presence on a medieval carving suggests a different lineage, one that looks back not to the wildwood of the Celts, but to the learned, classical tradition preserved in monastery libraries. It speaks of artistic revival and a more philosophical connection to nature's cycles. Other carvings offer even more pointed symbolism. Look closely and you might find the distinct three-lobed leaves of the vine. In the context of a Christian church, this is impossible to ignore. The vine is a central Christian symbol. In the Gospel of John, Jesus says, "I am the true vine." Wine made from grapes represents the blood of Christ in the Eucharist. A green man sprouting vine leaves, therefore, transforms dramatically. He is no longer a pagan holdout, but a representation of Christ's life-giving sacrifice, a symbol of spiritual nourishment literally flowering from a human form. He becomes a visual sermon carved in stone. Then there is ivy, an evergreen plant that clings and survives through winter, symbolizing eternal life and fidelity. Hawthorn, a tree steeped in European folklore as a gateway to the fairy realm and a protector against evil spirits, brings its own layer of local folkloric meaning. So what does this botanical code tell us? It reveals that the green man was not a static symbol with one approved meaning handed down from on high. Instead, it was a flexible idea, a visual template that local stone carvers, the artists on the ground, could adapt. The choice of leaf was their commentary. A carver in a region with strong Celtic memory might instinctively reach for the oak. A more scholarly artisan, inspired by a manuscript of Roman designs, might choose the acanthus. And a theologically minded craftsman, working under the guidance of a priest, might deliberately select the vine to weave the wild face seamlessly into Christian doctrine. This fluidity is the key. The same stone face could mean the enduring spirit of the ancient forest in one village and the living presence of Christ in the next. The green man absorbed the beliefs of the land and the hands that shaped him. This adaptability allowed him to survive, but it also meant his original, deepest meaning could be obscured, painted over by 1,000 local interpretations. To find that core, we must look past the leaves and into the eyes of the carvers themselves, into the very workshops where these mysterious faces were born. The leaves tell one story, but the hands that carved them reveal another. To truly understand the green man's place in the medieval world, we must meet his wild and often misunderstood cousin. Across the tapestries, manuscripts, and marginal doodles of the Middle Ages, another figure roams the edges of civilization. This is the wild man, known in old tales as the Woodwose. He is a creature of deep, untamed forests, completely covered in shaggy hair from head to toe, often depicted wielding a crude club. He represents raw, physical wilderness, the dangerous and chaotic force that exists outside the city walls, beyond the plowed fields and the church's steeple. He is the ultimate outsider, a symbol of what humanity feared and sought to conquer. The green man, however, occupies a completely different space. He is not in the wilderness, he is made of it. His body is not hairy but foliate, composed of cultivated plants like oak, vine, and acanthus. And most importantly, you do not find him lurking in the margins of a manuscript. You find him integrated into the very fabric of civilization itself. He is carved into the choir stalls where monks chanted, onto the bosses of cathedral ceilings high above praying congregations, and onto the stone frames of doorways that welcomed the faithful. This is the crucial distinction. The wild man represents nature against civilization, a force to be feared and excluded. The green man represents nature within civilization, a force that has been invited inside, tamed into artistry, and given a place of honor. He is the wildwood made orderly, the chaotic growth of the forest transformed into the precise, beautiful curves of a stone leaf. He symbolizes not a threat from beyond, but the vital, living energy that sustains the world from within. He is the breath of the forest in the church's stone lungs. This role helps explain his mysterious presence in sacred spaces. He was not a pagan idol smuggled in, but perhaps a deliberate theological statement carved in stone. In a medieval worldview that saw the natural world as a book written by God, the green man could be read as a chapter in that book, a personification of divine creation itself, bursting with life and woven directly into the house of worship. He reminded those inside that the spirit they prayed to was the same spirit that made the leaves grow. So while the hairy wild man was a story told to warn of the dangers outside, the leafy green man was a silent lesson about the sacredness of the world all around them, a world they were building their civilization upon. But this invites a fierce and unresolved debate. Is the green man a silent pagan god hiding in the church, or was he born from Christian thought itself? Scholars have been divided for generations, and the evidence on both sides is compelling. The first major theory is often called the pagan survival hypothesis. Its proponents look at the green man and see a ghost, the lingering spirit of a much older world. They point directly to figures like Cernunnos, the Celtic horned god of the forest, animals, and fertility, often depicted with antlers and surrounded by natural abundance. When Christianity spread across Europe, it did not simply erase thousands of years of belief. Old holy sites became new churches, old festivals were repurposed, and old symbols, it is argued, were quietly absorbed. The green man, in this view, is one of those symbols. He is a covert representation of the ancient spirit of the wildwood, a deity of life, death, and rebirth that the local people understood in their bones. The stonemasons, many of whom would have been local men with folk memories of these older tales, could have been subtly embedding this familiar face into the new stonework as a form of quiet continuity, a way to make the new faith feel rooted in the old land. The sheer abundance of the motif, its appearance in places like remote village churches far from theological centers, and its undeniable visual power all suggest a symbol that resonated on a deep, perhaps pre-conscious level. It feels older than the churches that house it. The opposing view is just as passionate. Many medieval historians and art scholars argue that the green man is a purely Christian invention, a creation of the medieval mind for a medieval purpose. They note a critical absence. There is no clear, uninterrupted artistic lineage that directly connects a pagan Celtic deity like Cernunnos to the 11th century church carvings. The foliate heads of ancient Rome are a possible source, but they were revived through classical pattern books in monasteries, not through folk memory. So what Christian meaning could this wild face hold? One interpretation is starkly moral. The face, being consumed by sprouting foliage, could symbolize the sin of gluttony or the decay of the flesh, a memento mori reminding the faithful that their physical bodies would return to the earth. Yet another, more hopeful reading sees it as a symbol of resurrection and eternal life through Christ. Just as leaves burst forth anew each spring from what seems like dead wood, so too shall the faithful be reborn. The leaves sprouting from the mouth could even represent the spread of the gospel, the fruitful word of God flowering into the world. Proponents of this view argue that medieval theologians were brilliantly creative in using nature as a symbolic language. The green man was not a smuggled idol, but a sophisticated piece of theological art, as intentional as a stained glass window depicting a saint. The debate often hinges on a single, unanswerable question: what was in the heart and mind of the anonymous carver as his chisel struck the stone? Was he thinking of a forbidden forest god from his grandfather's stories, or was he carefully following a design from his master, intended to illustrate a sermon about rebirth? The frustrating and fascinating truth is that both interpretations could be valid even for the same carving. The green man's genius is his ambiguity. He is a vessel into which different people across different centuries can pour their own understanding. A medieval peasant might have seen the familiar face of the forest spirit, feeling a comforting recognition. The local priest might have pointed to the same carving and preached a sermon on the resurrection. The symbol held them both. This lack of a definitive answer is not a failure of scholarship, but a testament to the symbol's profound depth. It means the green man was not a fixed sign with a single meaning, but a living idea, constantly being renegotiated between the old world and the new, between the forest and the church, between the earth and the spirit. The debate between pagan survival and Christian meaning is a European one, but the green man's face peers out from a much wider world. This symbol, or something hauntingly similar, appears in cultures separated by oceans and millennia, challenging any simple story of origin. In ancient Mesopotamia, one of the cradles of civilization, cylinder seals depict a figure sometimes called the Green One, a god associated with vegetation and the annual cycle of growth. This deity is often linked to Tammuz, a shepherd god whose myth involves descent into the underworld and a return that brings life back to the earth. It is a story of death and rebirth mirrored in the seasons. Far to the east, in the rich tradition of Hindu and Buddhist art, we find the yakshas. These are nature spirits, guardians of treasures hidden in the earth and roots of trees. In countless temple carvings, a yaksha is shown half emerging from the trunk of a tree, his lower body fused with the bark, his upper body human and alive. He is not being consumed by leaves, he is the living heart of the tree itself given form. Then cross the Atlantic to the ancient civilizations of Mesoamerica. The Maya worshipped a maize god, a deity of life and sustenance. In their stunning art, the maize god is often portrayed with a headdress of lush maize leaves, or even with his hair flowing into tasseling corn silk. His very body is sometimes shown as a growing stalk, his spirit animating the crop that sustained an entire people. A face emerging from vegetation, a head made of leaves, a deity whose body is the plant, these echoes are unmistakable. So what are we to make of this global gallery of foliate faces? We are left with two breathtaking possibilities, each profound in its own way. The first is the theory of cultural diffusion, a slow, patient journey of an idea across the map of human history. Could the seed of this symbol have been carried along the Silk Road from Mesopotamia? Could it have traveled with traders and storytellers from the Middle East to India, and from there, through countless retellings and reinterpretations, eventually found its way into the sketchbooks of medieval stonemasons? It is a compelling narrative of connection, showing how human cultures have always been in conversation, even across vast distances. But the second possibility is even more arresting. What if these symbols arose independently, in isolation from one another? What if, when the Maya sculptor carved the maize god from limestone, the Indian artist chiseled the yaksha from temple rock, and the Norman mason shaped the leafy face in his church, they were all reaching for the same deep human understanding? This would suggest the green man is not an imported idea, but an emergent one. He is an archetype, a primal pattern buried in the shared human psyche. Whenever people have looked at a forest and felt its silent, watchful presence, or tended a field and understood that their life literally grew from the soil, this image of a face made of leaves may have been the most natural expression of that awe. It is the human mind recognizing a consciousness in nature and giving it a face so we can begin to understand it. This global context does not solve the mystery, it deepens it magnificently. It asks us whether the green man is a relic of a single, forgotten tradition, or a testament to something universal within us all. This darker reading of the symbol brings us face to face with a central, unsettling truth of the medieval world. The green man can be a stark reminder of mortality, a memento mori carved in stone. In this light, the leaves are not a celebration of life, but a graphic illustration of decay. The face is not being born from the forest, it is being consumed by it. The vines sprouting from the mouth and eyes become a visceral metaphor for the physical body's inevitable return to the earth, where it will decompose and become fodder for new growth. This interpretation transforms the symbol into a moral lesson, a warning against vanity and worldly attachment. It whispers to the faithful that no matter one's station in life, king or peasant, the body is merely transient flesh, destined to feed the roots of the oak and the ivy. This somber theme was not an obscure idea, but a pervasive cultural current. We see it vividly in the danse macabre, the dance of death, a popular artistic motif of the same era. In these paintings and woodcuts, a grinning, skeletal death leads a procession of people from every walk of life, popes, emperors, merchants, and children, to the grave. The message is unambiguous and democratic: death comes for everyone. The green man, in his more grim or skeletal forms, fits seamlessly into this moral landscape. He is a still, silent participant in that same dance. Look at some carvings, particularly those from later periods or in more severe architectural settings. The face is often gaunt, the eyes hollow, the expression one of anguish or serene acceptance rather than wild joy. The foliage seems less like an exuberant burst and more like a relentless, engulfing force. In the cloisters of a monastery where monks contemplated the soul's journey, such a carving would serve as a perfect daily meditation on the temporary nature of the physical self. It is a reminder that from dust we came, and to dust, or in this case, to leaf and vine, we shall return. This reading does not cancel out the others, but layers over them with profound gravity. It means the same stone face that could symbolize Christ's resurrection to one viewer could, to another, represent the humbling decay of the mortal coil. The green man becomes a mirror for the medieval mind's deepest preoccupations, a fascination with the boundary between life and death, and a constant awareness of nature not just as a provider, but as the ultimate recycler of all flesh. He is the earth itself, patiently waiting to reclaim what it has lent. Yet within that same stone, the very same carving could whisper a message of profound hope. This is the green man as a symbol of resurrection, a visual promise of life eternal. In this light, the leaves are not agents of decay, but emblems of unstoppable rebirth. They represent the miraculous truth that from death springs new life, a core tenet of Christian faith centered on the resurrection of Christ. The imagery is powerfully direct. A face that seems stone dead suddenly teems with living foliage. It is a portrait of transformation, of the spirit bursting forth from the tomb of the flesh. This interpretation finds strong resonance in the words of Scripture itself. In the Gospel of John, Jesus tells his disciples, "I am the vine, you are the branches." This metaphor paints a vivid picture of spiritual connection and nourishing life flowing from a divine source. A green man carved with vine leaves becomes a stunning illustration of that very verse. He is the human branch, intimately connected to and sustained by the holy vine, his very existence a testament to that life-giving bond. The foliage sprouting from him is not a consumption, but a flourishing, the visible sign of a soul alive in faith. The placement of these carvings within churches often strengthens this hopeful reading. Look for green men positioned near altars, the focal point of the Eucharist where bread and wine become symbols of Christ's sacrifice and resurrection. Find them adorning Easter sepulchres, the temporary tombs used in medieval ceremonies to reenact the burial and glorious rising of Christ. In these sacred contexts, the leafy face is no morbid reminder. It is a celebratory declaration. It speaks of the stone rolled away, of the empty tomb, and of the eternal spring that follows the long winter of death. This duality is the symbol's true genius. The same carved face in the same sacred space could hold two profound and seemingly opposite truths for the congregation. For the penitent sinner, it was a memento mori, a sobering reflection on mortality. For the faithful believer, it was a beacon of hope, a stone carved him to resurrection. This layered meaning allowed the green man to speak to the full complexity of the human experience within the church, the fear of death and the yearning for salvation, held together in a single, silent gaze of leaves and stone. He was not a puzzle with one solution, but a mirror reflecting the deepest questions of the heart. And as the centuries turned, that mirror would be picked up by new hands who would see their own hopes and fears reflected in his timeless face. Perhaps the simplest answer has been staring at us all along, carved not in theology but in trade. Could the green man be nothing more than a stonemason's signature? To explore this idea, we must step down from the soaring arches and enter the dusty, sunlit workshop where the stone was actually cut. medieval stonemasons were not anonymous laborers. They were highly skilled members of powerful guilds, organizations that guarded their techniques and traditions with intense secrecy. A guild was more than a union, it was a brotherhood bound by oath, possessing knowledge passed from master to apprentice over a lifetime. This knowledge was their living, and their reputation was everything. When a team of masons completed a section of a cathedral, a pillar, a window arch, a ceiling boss, how did the master builder know whose work it was? How did a carver claim pride in his craft? They often left a mark. Stonemasons' marks are a well-documented historical fact. These are simple geometric signatures, a unique combination of lines, curves, or symbols chiseled discreetly on a finished stone. It was a practical record for payment and a quiet testament to the hand that made it. But what if, for some particularly gifted carvers or a specific lodge of masons, their signature was not a simple geometric mark, but something more artistic and profound? This theory suggests the Green Man was that elaborate signature. It was a master carver's flourish, his personal trademark elevated to high art. The motif perfectly encapsulates the mason's entire purpose. He took a block of raw, unformed stone, a piece of the earth itself, and through skill and vision, transformed it into a living, leafy face. The Green Man is the story of that transformation. It is the wildness of nature, the quarry stone being shaped by human intelligence and discipline into a symbol of ordered beauty. In this reading, the leaves sprouting from the mouth are not a pagan spirit or a Christian parable. They are the very essence of creation, the ideas and forms that burst forth from the craftsman's mind into the inert material. This theory grounds the symbol in a wonderfully human reality. It speaks of artisan pride, of a secret guild language understood only by fellow initiates. A master might teach his apprentices not just how to carve a leaf, but how to carve their leaf in their distinctive style as a badge of their shared craft. Seeing a particularly fine or unique Green Man in a church might then be like finding the hidden signature of a long-forgotten artistic genius. It removes the burden of cosmic meaning and places the symbol firmly in the realm of skilled hands, sweat, and local identity. Yet even this practical explanation cannot fully contain the symbol's power. While a mason may have used it as a signature, the reason this specific image resonated so deeply, why it was chosen over a simple star or shield, likely still taps into those older, deeper currents. He was carving an idea that already lived in the wood and the stone and in the hearts of the people who would worship beneath it. His signature, in the end, became something far greater than himself. But the church walls hold another secret, one far more startling and direct. Carved beside doorways or on corbels, often in the very same buildings that host the Green Man, is a figure that seems to defy all medieval decorum. This is the Sheila na gig. Her name is as mysterious as her image, possibly derived from old Irish phrases, but her form is unmistakable. She is a female figure, usually skeletal or aged, who grips open an exaggerated vulva, presenting it boldly to the viewer. To modern eyes, and perhaps to medieval ones as well, the image is shocking, confrontational, and deeply puzzling. Why would such an explicit carving adorn a sacred space? The mystery deepens when we realize she is frequently found in architectural partnership with the Green Man. They are not random neighbors but a deliberate pairing. While the Green Man is foliage given a masculine face, the Sheila is raw, feminine generation carved in stone. He is the leaf and the vine, she is the portal of birth itself. Together, they form a potent, complete picture. They represent the two halves of a terrifying and awesome whole, the full, untamed life force of nature in its most primal aspects, growth and generation, the vegetative and the procreative. This pairing screams of a symbolism older than the church walls that contain it. The Green Man, with his mouth spouting leaves, symbolizes the outward, expansive fertility of the plant world. The Sheila na gig, with her explicit gesture, symbolizes the inward, receptive, and human fertility of the body. One is a face consumed by nature, the other is a body presenting the very source of human nature. Placed together, often guarding a church doorway, they become twin guardians of a profound and ancient truth. They are a stark reminder that life, in all its forms, is not a polite or sanitized process. It is messy, potent, sometimes frightening, and always rooted in the physical realities of earth and body. This partnership powerfully supports the idea that both symbols are surviving fragments of a pre-Christian worldview, one that did not separate the sacred from the sexual or the spiritual from the fertile. They represent a folk understanding of the world's power that the new theology could not entirely erase, so it absorbed them, placing them at the threshold as a final, raw lesson before one entered the ordered space of prayer. To pass between them was to acknowledge the full, shocking power of creation itself. The raw power of the Sheila na gig and the green man guarding church doors speaks a language older than words, but the symbol would find its voice in story. Centuries after those stones were carved, the leafy face stepped out of the architecture and into one of the most enduring tales of English literature. In the late 14th century, an anonymous poet penned Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. The story begins in King Arthur's court during a Christmas feast, a pinnacle of chivalry and civilized order. Their revelry is shattered by the sudden, thunderous arrival of a visitor. He is a giant of a man, but his most shocking feature is that he is entirely green. The poet describes him in vivid detail. His skin, his hair, his rich clothing, even the horse he rides are all the color of verdant green. In his hand, he carries a massive axe and a holly bob, a winter-green plant. This Green Knight issues a terrifying challenge. He will allow any brave knight to strike him once with his own axe, on the condition that the challenger seek him out 1 year hence to receive a blow in return. Sir Gawain, the model of courtly virtue, accepts. With one swift stroke, he beheads the Green Knight, and then the impossible happens. The giant body strides forward, picks up its own severed head, and the head speaks. It reminds Gawain of their bargain, to meet at the Green Chapel in a year's time before the knight rides away, holding his own head like a grisly lantern. This literary figure is the Green Man fully animated. He is the untamed, testing force of nature itself invading the safe, walled world of Camelot. He is not evil, but he is utterly other, operating by rules older and stranger than the codes of chivalry. The holly bob he holds is a direct link to the vegetative world, and his survival of decapitation echoes the ancient Celtic cult of the head with terrifying literalism. Gawain's journey, a year later, is a journey into the raw, wintry wilderness to face this promise. The entire poem is a confrontation between human order and the wild, a test of a man's virtue against the immoral, cyclical power of nature represented by the Green Knight. Here, the symbol is no longer static stone. It is a character, a catalyst, and a moral force, proving that the idea of the leafy man had rooted itself deeply in the medieval imagination, ready to be woven into epic poetry. For centuries after Gawain, the symbol slept again in the stones, a curious footnote for antiquarians. Then, in the spring of 1939, as the world stood on the brink of a catastrophic war, it was given the name we all know today. The key figure was a woman named Julia Somerset, Lady Raglan. She was not a professional academic, but a passionate folklorist and historian, part of a vibrant circle of thinkers studying British folk traditions and the Morris dance. In an article for the journal Folklore, she turned her attention to the countless leafy faces in the churches around her. Frustrated by them being vaguely called foliate heads, she proposed a bold, unifying name. She called them the Green Man. Her argument was direct and influential. She linked the church carvings directly to the Green Knight from the medieval poem, and further back to the ancient, pagan May Day celebrations and the folk figures like Jack in the Green, a man covered in leaves who led springtime processions. For Lady Raglan, these were all fragments of a single, continuous tradition, a pagan vegetation spirit, a god of the wildwood who had survived in disguise. Her naming was a stroke of genius. It gave a scattered artistic motif a powerful, memorable identity. It framed the symbol not as mere decoration, but as the ghost of a forgotten god. This act of naming in 1939 was a resurrection. It plucked the Green Man from the realm of architectural history and planted him firmly in the fertile soil of modern myth-making. That soil was being vigorously tilled by another influential mind, the poet and novelist Robert Graves. In his seminal work, The White Goddess, published in 1948, Graves constructed a vast personal mythology around a single primal deity, the goddess of birth, love, and death, who ruled over poetry and inspiration. In his complex system of tree alphabets and lunar calendars, the Green Man found a new and potent role. Graves identified the Green Man as the goddess's son and consort, the doomed vegetative god who is annually sacrificed and reborn. He linked him to figures like Adonis, Attis, and Dionysus, gods who die with the harvest and return with the spring. For Graves, the Green Man was not just a folk memory. He was an archetypal character in the eternal, tragic romance between the poet and the muse, between humanity and the life-giving, destructive force of nature embodied by the goddess. Graves's interpretation, though controversial and not accepted by scholars as historical fact, was electrifying. It was poetic, sweeping, and deeply resonant in a post-war world yearning for connection to ancient cyclical truth. Between Lady Raglan's naming and Graves's mythologizing, the Green Man was utterly transformed. He was no longer a curious medieval carving. He was reborn as a countercultural icon, a symbol of pre-Christian spirituality, ecological consciousness, and rebellion against a sterile, industrial modern world. This 20th century revival ensured the Green Man would not remain a relic. It gave him a new story, one that would carry him out of the churches and into the forests of the modern imagination, where his next chapter was already beginning to unfold. That mid-century revival, fueled by folklore and poetry, primed the symbol for its most urgent transformation. By the 1970s, a new and powerful movement was searching for a face. As environmental awareness grew from a scientific concern into a global cultural force, people needed an image that embodied their cause, something more profound than a simple recycling logo. They found it staring back at them from the pages of Robert Graves and the old stone of country churches. The Green Man was rediscovered not as a historical artifact but as a living emblem. Environmentalists, neo-pagans, and those seeking a spirituality rooted in the earth rather than the heavens all began to claim him. In their hands, he was no longer a medieval moral lesson or a mason's mark. He became the literal Green Man, the spirit of the planet itself, a personification of the living, breathing biosphere that humanity was now threatening. This was a complete reinvention, a new layer of meaning applied with passionate intensity. You could now see his face everywhere. A new ecological consciousness was celebrated. He appeared on the covers of books about deep ecology, his leafy visage a stark contrast to images of deforestation and pollution. He was carved into new garden gates and community park benches, no longer in grim stone but often in warm, inviting wood. At music festivals and Earth Day gatherings, people wore masks of leaves and vines, their faces becoming temporary green men and women, dancing in a direct physical connection to the symbol's power. Modern artists embraced him, creating stunning bronze sculptures for public squares, intricate ink drawings for tarot decks, and vibrant paintings where his foliage might morph into endangered animals or choke on plastic vines. This modern Green Man is almost always sympathetic, his expression one of sorrowful wisdom or urgent appeal. He is the ancient witness to our folly, the silent god of the forest watching his domain be paved over. The historical accuracy of this interpretation is, by scholarly standards, highly debatable. There is little evidence that the original medieval carvers thought of themselves as proto-environmentalists. But that is almost beside the point for those who wield the symbol today. They are not looking for historical verification. They are engaging in a powerful act of myth-making. They are reaching back across time, grabbing an image that feels instinctively true and saying, "This is what we have forgotten." This face reminds us that we are not separate from nature, we are of it. Our bodies are made of the same stuff as the leaves, and our survival is inextricably linked to the health of the whole system he represents. In an age of climate change, mass extinction, and concrete landscapes, the green man has become a rallying cry against alienation from the natural world. He gives a name and a form to the grief of ecological loss and also to the hope for regeneration. He symbolizes not just nature's spirit, but our own potential to re-green our world, to let new life burst forth from the barren places we have created. This modern chapter may be an invention, but it is an invention that speaks to a profound and universal human need. It proves the symbol's ultimate resilience. The green man is not a fossil, he is a seed, and in the fertile, anxious soil of the modern era, he has sprouted once more with a message more vital than ever before. So where do you begin your own search for this silent watcher? The key is to look in the places most people never do. Your eyes must travel away from the grand windows and the central altar and into the architectural shadows. Start by looking straight up. In the vaulted ceiling of a Gothic cathedral where the stone ribs meet, you will often find a carved knob called a roof boss. These were not merely structural, they were canvases, and there, amidst carvings of saints and angels, you might find him, a leafy face compressed into a roundel, gazing down on the congregation from a height of 50 feet or more. He was a secret for those who lifted their eyes above the mundane, then moved to the choir stalls where the monks or canons would stand for hours during long services. Beneath the folding seats on the underside are small shelves called misericords, literally meaning mercy, as they offered a slight rest for the weary. The carvers decorated these hidden surfaces with a wild menagerie of scenes, from daily life to fantastical beasts. And here, in this private space only visible when the seat was tipped up, the green man often lurks. It was a joke, a surprise, a personal meditation for the cleric who found it. Do not forget the capitals, the tops of stone columns. As your gaze travels up a pillar, stop where it blossoms into the arch. These transitional spaces are frequently filled with intricate carvings, and the foliate face is a natural resident there, a spirit of the stone itself emerging into the architecture. Finally, look for the corbels, the stone brackets that support a shelf or a beam. Projecting from walls, these faces would peer out at an angle, often at eye level or just above, engaging directly with anyone who passed. This placement was deliberate. The green man was not meant to be the central focus of worship. He was a punctuation mark in the stone sentence of the church, a hidden lesson, a moment of wonder. Finding him was an act of participation. It rewarded the curious, the observant, the person who took the time to truly see their surroundings. It transformed the building from a static monument into a living puzzle. So next time you step into an ancient church or hall, become a detective. Let your eyes wander into the corners and climb the heights. That moment of discovery when you lock eyes with a face made of oak or vine that has been waiting in silence for 800 years is a direct, wordless conversation with the past. You are not just finding a symbol, you are completing an act of observation someone hoped you would make. And in that moment, the mystery is no longer abstract, it is personal and wonderfully alive. But our leafy witness has a secret, a hidden face that challenges everything we assume about him. We have spoken of the green man, but what about the green woman? The very name pushes us toward a masculine reading, yet the symbol itself is far more fluid than that. Look closely, and you will find them scattered like rare jewels across the stonework of Europe. These are faces with softer features, sometimes crowned with braided hair, their lips parting to spill forth not just leaves but delicate flowers like roses or lilies. They are often called green women, or more poetically, foliate maidens. One of the most famous examples stares from a roof boss in the cloisters of Norwich Cathedral in England. Her face is serene, framed by curling foliage that seems less like a consumption and more like an elegant adornment. She is not an anomaly. In the church at Jevington, also in England, another feminine foliate head looks out, her expression calm and knowing. These carvings are undeniably rare compared to their masculine counterparts, but their existence is critically important. They force us to ask a piercing question. Does the rarity of the green woman mean the symbol is fundamentally male, or does her very presence, however occasional, reveal that the life force it represents transcends our human ideas of gender altogether? The difference in depiction offers clues. The classic green man often has a wild, sometimes grotesque energy. The leaves erupt from him with force, as if he is being transformed or overcome by the vegetative power. The green woman, in the few examples we have, often carries a different feeling. The foliage seems more integrated, more decorative, sometimes even nurturing. The flowers mixed with the leaves suggest fertility, beauty, and a gentler aspect of nature's abundance, the blossoming orchard rather than the untamed forest. This could point to a deliberate symbolic division in the medieval mind, using gender to represent two complementary faces of nature, one raw and untamed, the other cultivated and life-giving. Yet, even this interpretation can feel too neat, a modern lens placed over a medieval chisel. Perhaps the carvers were simply varying their designs, and the softer features we read as feminine were just one artistic style among many. The deeper truth may lie in the very substance of the symbol. The green man was never about a man. He was about the leaf, the vine, the acanthus. He is the life in the leaf given a face we can recognize. In a medieval world where most stone carvers were men, and where the default human form in art was often male, it was perhaps simply more intuitive to shape that life force with a masculine visage. The green woman, then, is not a separate category, but a brilliant exception that proves the rule. She shows that the core idea, the human form merging with the plant world, was powerful enough to occasionally break free from its usual artistic conventions. Her rarity does not diminish her significance, it amplifies it. She is a reminder that the force symbolized here, this spirit of growth and regeneration, is older and more fundamental than man or woman. It is the generative principle of the earth itself which can wear any face it chooses. So the next time you search the stonework, look not just for the wild man of the woods, but for the quiet maiden of the meadow. In finding her, you see the symbol not as a portrait of a god, but as a mirror for nature's boundless, shape-shifting soul. This profound silence in the written record is perhaps the most baffling clue of all. We have thousands of these carvings, but their name is never carved beside them. In all the vast archives of medieval Europe, in the meticulous church inventories, the theological treatises, the sermons, and the guild account books, the figure we call the Green Man is almost never directly mentioned. No bishop writes a letter warning of a pagan idol hiding in the choir stalls. No stonemason's ledger itemizes payment for carving the leafy face. It is as if an entire cathedral could be built, filled with hundreds of these faces, and no one thought to write down what they were for. This absence is not an empty space, it is a roaring silence. It forces us to confront a startling possibility. Perhaps the people of the time did not see him as a separate character with a name and a story at all. For them, the meaning might have been so embedded, so instinctive, that it required no explanation. Think of how we use symbols today. We might carve a rose into a wooden panel or paint a dove on a ceiling without feeling the need to attach a written note explaining that the rose means love or the dove means peace. The meaning is carried in the culture, in the shared understanding of the community. The Green Man may have operated in exactly this way. He was not a deity to be worshipped or a saint to be invoked. He was a visual idea, a piece of symbolic shorthand for concepts so fundamental they lived in the air people breathed. He was the cycle of the seasons, the fertility of the land, the truth that life feeds on death. In an age before widespread literacy, where the church itself was called the poor man's Bible, these stone images were the text. The meaning was in the seeing, not in the reading. There is another, more secretive possibility. What if the knowledge was deliberately kept out of written records? What if the Green Man was part of an oral tradition, a body of craft knowledge and symbolic understanding passed strictly from master mason to apprentice by word of mouth and the guiding hand on the chisel? Medieval guilds were famously protective of their mysteries. The secrets of their trade, the meanings behind their motifs, were their power and their livelihood. To write it down would be to risk that knowledge falling into the hands of a rival guild or an uninitiated outsider. The meaning of the leafy face may have been one of those guarded secrets. In the lodge, by the light of a lantern, a master might explain to his apprentices that this face with oak leaves connects us to the old forest, or that this one with vines speaks of the true vine of Christ. This was living knowledge performed in the act of creation, not archived on parchment. It belonged to the hands and the heart, not the library. This would explain the silence perfectly. The scholars and priests who wrote the books were not stonemasons. They moved in a world of words and theology. The masons moved in a world of stone and symbol. Their languages were different, and one simply never translated its deepest craft secrets into the other. So the Green Man persisted, not as a heresy to be condemned or a doctrine to be celebrated, but as a silent, understood conversation between the craftsmen and the community that lived with their work. His mystery was protected by the very act of making him, a secret hidden in plain sight for anyone with eyes to see, but with no key provided in any written word. This silence in the ancient stone was broken by the roar of the 20th century's imagination. The Green Man, having been named and revived, did not remain confined to folklore journals or church guidebooks. He found a new sanctuary, one built not of limestone but of stories, in the burgeoning world of popular culture. Here, his ancient, complex essence was often streamlined into a powerful archetype, yet his core identity as the spirit of the wild remained unmistakably intact. One of the earliest and most profound modern translations appears in the work of J.R.R. Tolkien. In the ancient, walking, talking trees of his Middle-earth, the Ents, we see the Green Man's essence given narrative life. These shepherds of the forest are not mere foliage. They are the conscious, wrathful will of the natural world itself. When the wizard Saruman despoils their woods to fuel his war machines, the Ents do not simply mourn. They march. Their furious assault on Isengard is the ultimate fantasy of nature fighting back, a direct descendant of the wild force that the Green Man symbolized, now wielding boulders and river floods as weapons. Tolkien, a scholar of medieval literature, was undoubtedly aware of the Green Knight and the older traditions, and he channeled that raw, vegetative power into one of literature's most memorable scenes of ecological retribution. The symbol took a darker, more terrifying turn in modern horror. The 1973 British film The Wicker Man presents a chillingly literal interpretation. On a remote Scottish island, a pagan community still worships a deity of the harvest, and their central icon is a massive, woven effigy, the Wicker Man. While this is a structure meant for sacrifice, its title and its role as a focal point of ancient vegetative ritual directly invoke the folklore that Lady Raglan had assembled. The film plays on the fear of the old gods, the idea that the Green Man was not a gentle spirit but a demanding, primal force that required blood to ensure the fertility of the land. This portrayal taps directly into the symbol's most unsettling potential, the aspect that speaks of sacrifice and the dark cycle of life feeding on death. Perhaps the most direct and transformative modern descendant, however, emerged from the murky waters of American comic books. In 1971, writer Len Wein and artist Bernie Wrightson introduced Swamp Thing. The origin is a classic horror tale. Scientist Alec Holland, caught in an explosion in the Louisiana bayou, merges with the wetland to become a monstrous, muck-encrusted creature. But over time, especially under the legendary writing of Alan Moore, Swamp Thing evolved. He ceased to be a man in a swamp. He became the swamp. He became the green. This was a conscious, philosophical reinvention of the green man for the ecological age. Swamp Thing is the literal consciousness of the planetary plant life, an elemental guardian who feels every tree that is cut and every flower that blooms. His stories are myths for the modern world, where he battles polluters, explores the psychedelic realms of plant thought, and grapples with his lonely role as the protector of a world that fears him. In Swamp Thing, all the historical threads converge: the ancient guardian, the sacrificial victim, the force of nature, and are rewoven into a narrative of profound environmental consciousness. This journey continues unabated. In video games, from the wise and ancient Great Deku Tree in the Legend of Zelda to the mysterious, forest-bound spirits in countless fantasy role-playing games, the Green Man's archetype provides a ready-made template for characters who embody ancient wisdom and the secrets of the wild. In film and television, his face appears in set designs, his spirit in characters who serve as bridges between humanity and the natural order. Each of these portrayals, from the heroic to the horrific, simplifies the dense historical debate. They are not concerned with stonemasons' marks or the nuances of medieval theology. They seize upon the symbol's visceral, visual power, the face made of leaves, the idea of nature awake and aware. In doing so, they perform a vital act of cultural transmission. They ensure that the Green Man does not fossilize as a historical curiosity. They keep him alive, growing, and adapting in the shared stories of our time, introducing his timeless gaze to generations who may never set foot in a medieval cathedral, but who understand instinctively what he represents. The same digital tools that can map a distant planet are now being trained on these ancient stone faces. A quiet revolution is unfolding in the way we study the Green Man, one that uses light instead of a chisel. It is called digital archaeology, and it offers a way to preserve and interrogate these carvings without ever touching their weathered surfaces. The primary tool is photogrammetry, a process as elegant as it is powerful. Researchers simply take hundreds of overlapping photographs of a carving from every possible angle. Specialized software then analyzes these images, identifying common points across the photo set. It uses the subtle differences in perspective between each shot, much like our own two eyes create depth perception, to calculate precise three-dimensional coordinates. The result is not just a picture, but a perfect, manipulable digital twin. You can view this model on a screen, zooming in to see tool marks finer than a human hair, or rotating it to catch a play of virtual light that reveals details lost in shadow for centuries. For carvings high on a cathedral wall or hidden in a dark corner, this is transformative. It brings the inaccessible down to eye level, allowing for a scrutiny that would require scaffolding and potentially damaging contact with the original stone. Even more precise is three-dimensional laser scanning, where a laser beam maps the surface of the carving point by point, creating a cloud of millions of data points that builds an exquisitely accurate replica. These digital archives serve an urgent purpose beyond study. These carvings are under constant threat from acid rain, pollution, and the simple, relentless erosion of time. A three-dimensional scan becomes a permanent record, a backup of history itself. If a section of stone were to crumble away tomorrow, its precise form would be preserved in a digital vault, allowing future generations to study what was lost. But preservation is only the beginning. The true promise of this technology lies in connection and comparison. Imagine a vast database containing thousands of these three-dimensional models from churches across Britain, France, Germany, and beyond. Researchers could overlay them, comparing the curve of a leaf, the depth of a chisel cut, or the specific style of a pupil in the eye. This is where artificial intelligence enters the story. Pattern recognition algorithms trained on this immense dataset could one day detect subtle stylistic signatures invisible to the human eye. They might identify that the green men in a group of churches in Normandy all share a unique way of carving vine tendrils, a distinct handwriting in stone. Then they could match that signature to a cluster of carvings in southern England. This digital detective work could trace the migration of a specific lodge of stonemasons, following their unique style like a trail of breadcrumbs across the map of Europe. It could potentially answer the great puzzle of the symbol's explosive reappearance in the 11th century. Did a single, influential pattern book travel from one monastery workshop to another, or did a guild of masons possessing a secret tradition physically travel from site to site, planting the seed of the leafy face wherever they worked? The technology cannot tell us what the carvers believed, but it might finally show us how they moved. By mapping the flow of technique, we could see the symbols spread not as a vague cultural drift, but as the tangible footsteps of individual artists, solving a logistical mystery that written records have kept silent for 1,000 years. Yet another layer of meaning lies hidden within the color of his very name. Green was not merely the shade of leaves to the medieval and Renaissance mind. It was the color of life itself, a hue charged with profound esoteric power. This leads us into the shadowy, transformative world of alchemy, where the green man finds a startling new identity. In the secret language of the alchemists, green, or viriditas, represented the vital, animating force of nature. It was the verdant spirit that caused seeds to sprout and metals to grow within the earth, the same mysterious energy that infused all of creation. The alchemical quest, the great work, was a spiritual and physical process aimed at transforming base lead into perfect gold, but also at purifying the human soul. This process began with the nigrido, a blackening, a putrefaction, a symbolic death, and from that darkness, the next crucial stage was the viriditas, the greening. This was the moment of resurrection, when life stirred anew in the decomposed matter, a promise of the glorious transformation to come. Now look again at the carving in the church wall. A face, seemingly inert stone, bursts forth with lush green foliage. To an alchemically inclined thinker, this was not a decorative motif. It was a perfect emblem of the viriditas. It depicted the divine spark, the hidden life force awakening within the dead material world. The stone represented the prima materia, the chaotic base substance. The emerging leaves were the first glorious sign of the spirit liberating itself from matter. This interpretation connects the green man directly to the philosophical undercurrents of the Renaissance, a time when ancient Hermetic texts were rediscovered and studied in secret. Hermeticism taught the principle as above, so below, that the microcosm of humanity reflected the macrocosm of the universe, and that divine wisdom was hidden within nature, waiting to be decoded. For intellectuals and secret societies fascinated by these ideas, the green man carved on old buildings was no rustic folk symbol. He was a public secret, a silent confirmation of their philosophy. He was proof that the sacred was immanent, woven into the very fabric of the material world. A scholar like the mystic Jacob Boehme, who wrote extensively of the divine signature in all things, might have seen in that foliate face an illustration of his own beliefs. The symbol showed that God was not distant in heaven, but alive and growing in the stone, the tree, and the human soul. This esoteric reading did not replace the others, it deepened them. It meant the same church carving could be a moral lesson to the congregation, a mason's mark to the guild brother, and a profound alchemical glyph to the initiated philosopher. The green man became a multi-layered text, his meaning shifting with the knowledge of the observer. In this light, his persistence in architecture takes on a new dimension. He was not a survivor from a pagan past, but a perpetual signpost pointing toward a hidden transformation, a greening of the spirit that was always possible, always beginning anew, right there in the heart of the world. Rosslyn Chapel holds more green men than any other place on earth. Tucked away in the Scottish lowlands, this 15th-century masterpiece is a stone forest of intricate carvings, and woven throughout are over 100 distinct foliate faces. They are not a uniform army, but a startlingly diverse population. Some are youthful and serene, their faces calm as buds unfurled gently from their lips. Others are ancient and grimacing, with gnarled bark-like skin and foliage that seems to claw its way out of their features. There are faces that are clearly laughing, and others that appear to be screaming in a silent stone torment. This variety within a single, small chapel is a perfect microcosm of the entire mystery. Rosslyn does not offer one answer. It presents every possible interpretation at once, forcing us to confront the symbol's maddening and magnificent ambiguity. The chapel's own history is a tapestry of speculation, which only deepens the enigma of its leafy guardians. Founded in 1446 by William Sinclair, a nobleman with rumored connections to the outlawed Knights Templar, Rosslyn has long been a magnet for theories of hidden knowledge and esoteric secrets. Some look at the sheer density of green men and see a coded message from the Templars themselves, who may have encountered similar vegetative deities during their time in the Middle East. In this reading, the carvings are a heretical banner, a declaration of a nature-based spirituality preserved in stone by a secret society. Others delve into older Scottish soil, linking the faces to the Cailleach, the ancient Celtic goddess of winter and the land, or to the green spirits of the Scottish forests known in local folklore. The chapel's official dedication, however, is to Saint Matthew the Apostle, anchoring it firmly in Christian tradition. This context invites a purely Christian symbolic reading, the green men as emblems of resurrection, with the chapel itself as a spiritual garden, a new Eden carved from Scottish sandstone. What makes Rosslyn so compelling is that all these theories can feel true simultaneously. Walk through the chapel with the idea of Templar secrets in mind, and the green men become silent sentinels of a lost gnosis. Shift your perspective to pre-Christian lore, and they transform into the old gods of the land, peering from their new stone home. Focus on the Christian dedication, and they morph into a complex sermon on life, death, and rebirth through Christ. This is the ultimate lesson Rosslyn teaches. Context is not just about historical facts, it is about the lens through which we choose to look. The carvings themselves do not change, but their meaning shifts with our own understanding, our own questions. The chapel becomes a mirror for the seeker. This one site, therefore, embodies the entire centuries-long debate. It holds the pagan survival theory in its wild, pre-Christian-looking faces. It supports the Christian symbolism in its architectural purpose and dedication. It even hints at the Mason's mark theory through the incredible variety of styles, suggesting different individual artists leaving their unique leafy signature. Rosslyn Chapel does not solve the mystery of the Green Man. Instead, it gathers every strand of the mystery, every competing theory, every cultural echo, and braids them together into a single, breathtaking stone narrative. To stand beneath its canopy of carved foliage is to understand that the search for a single, definitive meaning may be missing the point entirely. The power lies in the conversation itself, a silent debate that has been raging in stone for nearly 600 years. Perhaps the deepest roots of this symbol are not in stone, but in the soil of the human mind itself. To explain the Green Man's uncanny global echoes and his timeless pull, we must shift our search inward into the realm of psychology and the architecture of our shared imagination. The work of the pioneering psychiatrist Carl Jung offers a compelling key. Jung proposed that beneath our personal memories and experiences lies a deeper layer, what he called the collective unconscious. This is not an individual possession, but a shared inheritance of the human species, a psychic bedrock filled with universal patterns and primordial images. He called these patterns archetypes. They are not specific images but innate potentials, hardwired templates for understanding fundamental aspects of existence: the mother, the hero, the shadow, the wise old man. These archetypes shape our dreams, our myths, and our most powerful symbols across all cultures. The green man in this light is not an idea that traveled. He is an archetype that awoke. Specifically, he can be seen as a profound manifestation of the archetype of the self, which represents the totality of the psyche and our drive toward wholeness, and even more directly as the archetype of the spirit of nature. This is the deep, instinctive recognition of a conscious, animate force within the living world. For our ancestors, and indeed for a part of us still, the forest was not a collection of objects. It was a subject. It had a presence, a personality, a will. It could be bountiful or withholding, a sanctuary or a place of terror. The green man gives that presence a face. He is the human mind's attempt to relate to the overwhelming, intelligent otherness of nature by giving it a form we can recognize and, in a way, communicate with. This explains the symbol's spontaneous appearance in disparate cultures. The medieval European stonemason, the ancient Indian sculptor, and the Maya artist were not copying each other. They were all independently giving shape to the same deep-seated psychic image rising from the collective unconscious. They were translating a universal human intuition into local stone and story. The archetype theory moves us beyond the either-or debates of history. It is not a question of pagan versus Christian or diffusion versus independent invention. Those are the surface-level stories we tell about the symbol once it has emerged. The archetype is the why beneath the how. It explains why this specific image, a human face merging with plant life, felt so instinctively right and powerful to people who had no contact with one another. It resonated because it was already inside them, a part of our species' psychic firmware. This is why the green man feels so familiar even when we see him for the first time. He speaks a language older than words. His enduring resonance in our modern era, especially as an emblem of ecology, confirms this. In a time of profound disconnection from the natural world, the archetype is stirring again with urgent force. Our environmental longing is not just political or scientific, it is deeply psychological. It is the self, the psyche's drive toward integration, recognizing that our wholeness depends on reconnecting with the living system we are a part of. The green man becomes the face of that yearning, a symbolic bridge back to a relationship we have forgotten on a conscious level, but which remains written into the very structure of our minds. He is not a relic but a reflection, a mirror held up to our own deepest need to belong to a world that is alive. That psychological bridge, the archetype, explains why the symbol feels so familiar, but it does not explain why the debate still rages. The green man's true power is not in the answer but in the question. His enduring fascination across centuries stems from a single, brilliant quality: profound, intentional ambiguity. This is not a flaw in our understanding, but the very feature that has kept him alive. He is a blank slate, a mirror of stone and leaf, and every generation that looks upon him sees its own face reflected back. Think of him not as a statue with a fixed meaning, but as a vessel. Into this vessel, different people pour their deepest beliefs. For the medieval Christian, he could be a sermon on resurrection, the true vine flowering from human form. For the village folk with older memories, he was the familiar spirit of the local oak wood, a quiet nod to the gods their grandparents knew. For the 19th century Gothic revivalist, he was a romantic emblem of a lost, handmade world. For the modern environmentalist, he is the urgent face of the living planet. Each interpretation is valid because the symbol itself refuses to dictate the terms. It presents a powerful, open-ended image, life emerging from form, the wild woven into order, and then steps back silent. This resistance to a single narrative is his greatest strength. A solved mystery becomes a footnote in a history book. A living mystery is a conversation that never ends. The Green Man is that conversation carved in stone. He exists in the fertile space between categories, between pagan and Christian, between art and religion, between humanity and nature. He belongs to everyone and no one, which is why so many have claimed him. The historian and the neo-pagan can stand before the same carving in a Devon church and have a completely different yet equally passionate experience. One sees a fascinating artifact of medieval craft, the other feels the presence of an ancient god. The symbol holds them both without contradiction. He is a perfect mirror for our changing relationship with the world. In an age of faith, he reflected theological ideas about creation and decay. In an age of industry, he became a symbol of the natural world we were rapidly losing. In our current age of ecological crisis, he transforms again into an icon of remembrance and hope, a reminder of the connection we have severed. The face does not change, but what we see in it shifts with our collective fears and longings. He shows us not who he was, but who we are and what we value most at any given moment in time. This is why the search for a definitive origin story, while compelling, may ultimately be beside the point. To pin him down to a single, proven meaning would be to dim his light. The Green Man is not a puzzle to be solved, but a presence to be experienced. His mystery is not a wall that blocks understanding, but a doorway that invites endless interpretation. He lives in the questions, in the debates, in the quiet moment of discovery when you find him gazing down from a shadowy roof boss. He is alive because we are still looking, still wondering, and still seeing our own world, with all its complexity, faith, and fear in his timeless, leafy eyes. That silent conversation, spanning continents and centuries, brings us to the end of our own journey. We began with a single stone face in a cathedral shadow and followed its leafy trail across a map of human wonder. We saw it as a pagan spirit hiding in the church, a Christian symbol of resurrection, a stonemason's proud signature, and an alchemist's vision of life stirring in matter. We watched it step from architecture into epic poetry as the Green Knight, and later be reborn in our time as an icon of the living earth. From the cult of the sacred head to the global archetype of the nature spirit, the Green Man has worn countless masks. Yet through every transformation, his core remains unchanged. He is the human face we give to the profound, animate mystery of the natural world. He is not a locked door with one key, but an open doorway inviting endless interpretation. His power lies not in a solved riddle, but in a perpetual, fascinating debate. And that debate is not just for scholars in libraries, it is a conversation you can join. The next time you walk into an old church or a historic building, let your gaze wander into the corners and climb the stone ribs. Look for the face in the leaves, the silent watcher in the roof boss or the capital. If you find one, take a picture, share it online with the tag Green Man. See what others have found, and add your voice to the modern tapestry of meaning woven around this ancient symbol. Ask yourself what you see in his eyes. Does he seem stern or joyful, consumed by nature or bursting with life? Your interpretation becomes part of his ongoing story. This channel is dedicated to unraveling historical mysteries that connect us to the past. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Green Man, please subscribe. We explore forgotten symbols, lost artifacts, and the enduring puzzles of history, and we want to hear from you. Have you ever spotted a Green Man carving? Do you have a local legend or a personal theory about what he represents? Leave a comment below and let's continue this ancient, leafy conversation.